You know, without the charts and all the statistics that have been just really really excellent displayed here tonight, to start the conversation with people in this room, not to just speak out and say this is what this great knowledge that Manny Guevara has, because I am sure that every day there's lines of people waiting outside GMHC for my latest pronouncement. I'm sure that's what happens. All right, but so I'm saving them. They're hearing it tonight. So I'm sure that people really don't wait for pronouncements from me or people on the panels, but what I'm hoping that we do tonight is to start the discussion of how do we address, how do we use some different ways to deal with stigma, especially within existing models that are still seeing rates of infection within Black and Latino communities skyrocket. So I think we need to start having some discussion, and it may not be the professionals. You know, when I'm in church, the preacher makes a story, you know, Noah, professionals built the ark, all right? So it may not be the professionals who make that, but it may be people in the community or people who are working in the community to have that discussion about within the Black and Latino communities in particular, how do we overcome, how do we make it so that it's okay, or people feel it's okay, that they're not going to be stigmatized just by the very nature by reaching out to care, or just by the very nature if they're couch searching, if someone finds the medication and knows they're HIV positive, you know, what happens to them in that point. So I think that's our challenge, and hopefully as we reach out today. And lastly, Dr. Monica Sweeney, who until recently was Assistant Commissioner of the Department of Health, one of the greatest people, I think. I know people feel differently. I think she's one of the greatest administrators out there. What she figured out and was pushing, she got a lot of criticism for it, is she wanted to, and I think she was successful, make it so that when somebody goes to the doctor, it's part of the procedure to do the HIV test. So the person doesn't have to make that leap and ask. The doctor will then do it. So that is just one of the strategies of, I think, that we need to have these conversations around stigma. How can we do some different strategies so that we can get people to at least start funneling in to the different areas that this cascade deals with and other treatment and prevention models deal with. Thank you.
Hi, good evening, everyone. I want to thank Krishna again, you know, for giving me this opportunity. You know, I take this real personal. You know, May 1st, 1997, I got a letter from the blood bank. I donated blood at my son's Catholic high school a month prior, and I was New York City Board of Ed teacher for like 14 years, and that year prior to me finding out that I was HIV positive, I started getting sick, but I had no clue that I was HIV positive, right? I'm not a promiscuous woman, and when I got this letter, I didn't know what they were talking about. I had no clue, but you know, one thing when you do donate blood, they look for to see if you're HIV positive. And, you know, I remember it as if it was yesterday. You know, I went down there, not having any pre-counseling or anything. The man just came out and told me I was HIV positive. And I was devastated, you know, and I became positive. I had a blood transfusion back in the early 80s. I had to have an operation. And that's how I became HIV positive. You know, and thank God for New York City Board of Education Department. They have, I don't know if they still have it, but when I was teaching back then, they had a department for people who were HIV positive. So they immediately linked me up with the doctor, and I was scared. I was like in denial. You know, let me backtrack. You know, I found out in 1997, I was in denial. It took me 2 years to start getting the medical care that I needed. You know, Manny was talking about stigma. You know, like, my hat goes off to people who, you know, have a very supportive family. You know, I didn't have that when I was first diagnosed. You know, everybody's story is different. You know, I had a mother who, you know, like, listen, I came from a good upbringing, an only child or whatever. When I told my mother that I was HIV positive, she like told my son, like, you don't have to listen to your mom. You don't have to listen to your mother anymore. She's gonna be dead. I'm still alive today. You know, I'm still alive. You know, when I first, went to the doctor, they have a thing that's called, there's different strains of, HIV, and I have what's called the wild strain. And at that time, my numbers were off the chart, and the doctor said, like, you immediately need to go on some HIV medication. And, I got on some HIV medication. It was difficult for me. It was very, very difficult for me to adhere to this medication. I think I was on like eight or 9 pills a day. Some medications had to be refrigerated. Some medications you couldn't eat before you took it. I mean, there were some restrictions that you had to, abide by. And it was difficult, and there were times when I just didn't want to adhere to my regimen. Sometimes I wanted to give up. Let me just say that, I wanted to give up. I always kept saying, why me? Feeling sorry for myself. How did this happen? Like, I realized life is going to show up. Things are going to happen. And I need to say, like, I'm so grateful to GMHC. Just so grateful to them. I'm a part of the women's group here. We have a thing like every 3-4 months. We have to bring in our lab report. There's accountability here. You talk about linkage to care. That's so important. I go to my doctor faithfully. A couple years ago, I said to the doctor, is it possible? Because I kept hearing about, 1 pill a day. And I said to him, well, is it possible? Maybe, I could go on 1 pill a day. So thank God I'm just taking 1 pill a day. I've been undetectable for 4 years now. And that's only by me doing what I need to do. You talk about, education, your income. Like, I had experience one time, my mother went with me. I had to have some oral surgery. And a lot of times when you go to these doctors, you fill out a form, they'll ask you, if you have any health conditions or whatever, and a lot of times HIV is on there. And I'm not going to sit there and lie. I checked it or whatever, and it was time for me, to see the doctor. He looked at the form, and he blatantly came out and said, I'm not going to treat you because I'm HIV. Now, he's a medical professional. They're supposed to follow all the university precautions, treat me just like any other person or whatever. And I, practically told him, like, listen, you're going to treat me, or else I'm going to report you. So he treated me. But, like, there is still a lot of stigma out here. Sometimes people think because you're HIV positive that they can talk to you any kind of way that they want to. Think that, you don't have any education or whatever. But once you tell them, like you have some upbringing, you have some education, then, the whole demeanor and the attitude towards you change. And I, like today I'm in a good place. Like, one time, I thought HIV consumed me. That's all I thought. HIV is only a part of me today. By taking care of myself, on a regular basis, I'm doing great. And sometimes, like I said, sometimes things happen for a reason. Because I have to be accountable. I have to go to my doctor. And I can tell the doctor, yeah, I'm taking my medication, but he can actually see if I'm taking my medication because it'll show up in my results. Like I was on a medication at one time, and it elevated my bilirubin. That's, I think, your liver enzyme. And he said it's nothing to worry about, but that's the only way that he knew that I was taking my medication. There's a whole, a variety of reasons why people, once they might find out that they are HIV positive, why they don't, necessarily go seek the immediate care. But for me, it's so important, like for outreach. People going out, sharing their stories to let people know that they're not alone. But first, you have to be comfortable with you. Like, let me just say this, right? I was a guest speaker at AIDS Walk this year, right, in Central Park. That was a wonderful opportunity. I never ever thought that I would be the guest speaker at AIDS Walk, right? And when Krishna asked me to do this, right, I was a little apprehensive, right? Because even though I did the AIDS Walk, I'm still not comfortable yet. With me fully disclosing, like if you notice here, it says Stephanie L, right? Stephanie L, like there's a part, like my last name is Valerie. So I said, Krishna, like, can you just put me down to Stephanie L? You know, I just want to say thank you to everybody, you know, for coming out, you know. Thank you.
Hi, that's a tough act to follow. It's a really, very moving story, and it's going to be a little drier here. So anyway, good evening. Thank you so much for the invitation to speak. I don't know that many people here, but just introduce myself again. Julie Myers, Interim Director of HIV Prevention at the City Health Department, and I also am an HIV primary care doctor up at Columbia. So next slide, please. So just wanted to define some of the disparities and show you the, on the handout here you have the US cascade, but this is the New York City cascade, and I thought it would be helpful to start there. So it shows the overall proportion of people who are believed to be living with HIV in New York City, which is over 130,000, the proportion that are diagnosed, linked to care, retained in care, presumed to have been started on antiretroviral therapy, and currently are allegedly suppressed. So as you can see, we're losing individuals at every step, and the end result is that only 41% of all people living with HIV in New York City are virologically suppressed, which we know is important for treatment, but it's also important for prevention as well. Next slide, please. So is the situation any different for Blacks compared with the city as a whole? So this is the care continuum just for Black people living in New York City. And ultimately what you can see is that it's the same overall level of virologic suppression, approximately, it was 41% for the city as a whole, 40% here, and that's versus 43% if you just separate out whites. So you can see there are some disparities, particularly overall in virologic suppression. So I just wanted to also thank Ellen Duval, who's my colleague in the health department, who prepared all of these care continuum. So next slide, please. So one of the things that I think is challenging about the care continuum is it starts once people are already infected. So what about disparities leading up to infection? And here this slide shows the diagnostic rates. So the number of new infections per 100,000 people every year. So you can see that for every 100,000